All right, folks, it's the guy with the bow tie checking in with you live for another edition of Business with Benefits. To my right, we have the amazing Ikokwu joining us here in Georgia with me.
Sir, glad to be
How
in
you
your
doing,
show,
man?
I am doing really, really well. Glad to be here, man.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me. So we're doing the home edition. I know you and I were talking about bringing the office home.
Absolutely.
So how's that been being around the family so much?
It's been a welcome change, man. I got to tell you, I share a lot about my story and just some of the adversity and challenges that I've been through. And one of the many benefits of all that stuff that I've gone through was this idea of just kind of like being present. I mean, you and I know, man, you can be in the same room with somebody and not be present. Like you're like in a completely different zone, right? So I used to share that with people all the time. And then it dawned on me as I started looking at the mechanics of like day-to-day living. Like I'd be gone really early because I'm an early bird. So I get my stuff in the morning and then I'm gone like by 7 or 8 to the office. And then my oldest, Ella, she actually does ballet like 3 nights out of the week. So I'd stay late to go pick her up at like 9 when she's done. So that's 3 nights I'm gone. Like usually every Friday I got a commitment at a local church where I serve at. So like 4 or 5 nights out of the week, I'm like gone 7 to 7. My youngest, my 5-year-old she wouldn't see me till like the weekends. I remember somebody asked me like, so what's dinners like at your house? I was like, dinners, we only do that on the weekends. You know, like say something and it's like staring right at you there. It's like, oh my God, did I just say we only do dinners? Like for the first time, it really just kind of like resonated with me, like how foreign that felt.
Man.
So needless to say, man, one of the many blessings of COVID is being
there you go.
more present at home. So
some of the good stuff. Well, I want to say thank you for joining me, and also thank you to #TeamLive, #TeamReplay. Wherever you are, however you consume this, please let us know in the comments so we can see what's going on. And I've known you for a little bit, and we have multiple connections that are similar. But for people that don't know who you are, kind of let them know who you are and why they should listen to you today.
Yeah, man, I'm a little bit of an oddball because, everybody's real big about branding and like getting really, really clear and focused on that one thing that you do. But I guess I'd say I'm a bit of a triple threat, man. I kind of serve as a business growth strategist, a mindset coach, and a personal finance expert. And what
Okay.
I do is I help purpose-driven entrepreneurs, typically six-figure entrepreneurs. I help them triple their leads, double their sales, and add another 100 grand in revenue and profits in 12 months or less. How do we do it? We work on what I call the inner game and the outer game of success. We show them how to master that, teaching them how to subconsciously incept the minds of their prospective clients so they can attract them like bees to honey,
Mm.
convert them to clients, and then get them to buy more. So that's the core of what we do. I also, have a lot of collaborations and JV type relationships with people who see some value in having me on their stages, whether it's podcasts or whatever the case may be, but also leveraging some of my proprietary processes and systems to either generate, 30 to 100 grand in passive income, or, generate as much as 100 to 250 in active income. So those are kind of like the two focal points in terms of what I do.
Okay. Perfect. Well, you got the audience decided. We got some people checking in here. We have
Good
Jajon
word.
Sort. Now we got the comments on screen. Everybody can see it now, finally.
Yeah, that's nice.
Jajon saying hi there. Sandra Smith. She also said Team Live. Hey, everybody.
In live. What's going on?
Ariane Conalar. Now, if I say your name wrong, please let me know in the comments, please. But Ariane, she said hey. And then Jejuan is Team Live.
What's
So
up?
one thing I want to start with that always caught me, that was striking about you. I watched your story and the story of Rich Dad Poor Dad and your authorship and the battles you've gone through. So let people know, because that book is all over the place. So kind of share your head to head, if you want to call it that, with Robert Kiyosaki back in the day.
Yeah. So my first piece of creative work was my book called Winning the Money Game, Separating the Myths from the Truth, Everything You Don't Know About Achieving Financial Independence. For those who know my story, you've likely heard me say that I've made and lost millions twice in my life. And let's see, when I wrote the book, this was in 2012. So this was during my second run. So after my first major financial loss, it happened right around 9/11. Obviously, we know what happened, to the stock market and to our country. So my assets got decimated. I experienced unemployment for the first time in my life, and that lasted 18 months. And that's an entire story all by itself. And then I had about a dozen properties that kind of went south on me because, dude, you got no income coming in, you got no assets. And so we filed bankruptcy and started over. And by God's grace, so this was like in 2003 that happened. I launched my business right about the same time, July 2002. And by 2008, dude, I was back up to 7-figure net worth. I had 6 figures in passive income. And I knew that the path that I took was the antithesis of what the financial services industry was telling everybody to do. And so I identified like 9 financial myths that they try to shove down our throats as the proverbial pathway to building financial independence. And I kind of talked about that in the book, showed the pathway that I took and how I was able to basically go from broke to kind of resurrecting my financial picture in 5 years. So when I released the book, Kiyosaki, as we know, is like he's like an icon in the industry, right? I mean, just about anybody who's got any acumen for finances at some point read one of his books. And so I remember we released the book in July 2012. And my team, we were tracking because we were gunning for the bestseller status, and we got it in the first week of its release.
Oh, man.
We were tracking to see where we were doing right on the top 100. And at one point, we had knocked out Kiyosaki's book, Cash Flow Quadrants. And so we, kind of snapshot that bad boy and kind of memorized it. Right? We took out an industry champion, right? So
Yeah.
that was a really cool moment.
That's awesome, too, especially considering the journey you've been on. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about, making your journey a dream, not a nightmare. Because you've been on both sides of that, unfortunately. But do you think you learn more from the nightmare side than the dream side on your journey?
Oh, definitely, dude. Yeah, I mean, you get comfortable, man, when you're in the dream side. You let your guards down, like you start slipping on those best practices that you had, right? But when you're on the devastation side, you start paying a lot more attention. Like, how did I get here, and how can I avoid that being here again, right? So, I know a lot of people say success leaves clues, and that's definitely right. But I think when you experience a fail, be it your first attempt at learning or your second attempt, if you got the right perspective, I think you could learn a whole lot more from those than you do being at the mountaintop for sure.
Okay. And the good thing, I mean, we're kind of going through a similar, bad crisis with coronavirus. Obviously, a lot of finances are changed. A lot of businesses are disrupted or destroyed at this point.
Yeah.
So when you look at the financial planning industry, because I mean, the stock market has been all over the place and hard to kind of calculate lately. So how do you think the financial services industry has kind of failed the average consumer in today's market?
That's a brilliant question, brother. I got to tell you, there are at least a couple of things I can think of, right? So one of the major sticking points for me is I see a lot of like industry heads that the best way I can put it is, man, they're not eating their own cooking. And
Hmm.
so, take Susie Orman, no hate against her. I love what she's doing. But, it was a few years back, somebody had either gotten wind of a lot of the financial disclosures that she makes. And, if you've watched any of her shows, she's constantly talking about stocks and how to invest and all that other stuff. But they looked at her financial disclosures and she had just, I mean, conservative, maybe ultra conservative would be the word. I mean, she was in like government securities and just nothing close to any of the things that she might have been promulgating on her show, right?
Uh,
See the exact same thing when you work with, financial brokers or people who work for any of the major financial services firms, right? I mean, they're quick to give you very specific recommendations about what you should do. But what I
mhm.
find to be a problem is like if you had them like cough up exactly how they're investing their own money, 9 times out of 10, they don't own any of that stuff that they're telling you to put
Uh,
in your portfolio, right? So that's a major sticking point for me for sure.
why do you think that is? I mean, because that's one of the first rules of sales is, use what you sell. So why do you think that's a big misnomer with the financial services industry?
Well, it's, one of the things is it's a sad truth, but a lot of the people that are in the financial services industry are the very ones who need the most help with their personal finances, right? So it's like, one reason could be they don't have the financial wherewithal to
Okay.
take advantage of some of the opportunities that are available to them. Another is that they're just, not being true to what it is that they're trying to do. So, as I know, that there are a lot of incentives within the industry that could impact a financial services professional's ability to make, recommendations that are coming from a core place of just really serving, as opposed to being misguided by the opportunity to make some money. So,
Mhm.
those are a couple of the reasons that jump out to me for sure.
So that's one side. That's for the professional that's getting compensated from whatever product. But what about the marketing? Because I mean, there's so many commercials for different apps, different brokerage firms, different strategies. So what about the way they market it to the consumer? Because I think you'll see a commercial for E-Trade, for example, and no shade on E-Trade, but just you'll see a
Mm.
commercial that lures you in with some fancy graphics. But how about the marketing to the consumer side?
Yeah, the consumer side is a big, big problem. I mean, I think the overarching problem I see is a lot of focus on what I would call the wrong things. And then by focusing on the wrong things, nobody really pays attention to the right things. So let me give you like 3 examples. So
Okay.
there's what I call the rate of return problem. And here's why it's a problem. So I show up, I'm your financial broker. I go, yo, Daryl, dude, I've got this amazing investment. It is so amazing that I could virtually guarantee that you get into this thing, you get into this bad boy, man, like next couple of years, you're looking at a 20% return on investment, right? And dude, it's like virtually guaranteed. And so you get all hyped up. You're like, yeah, dude, I want in. And you cough up
Hmm.
100 grand. And let's say in the first year, the investment does well. Maybe it goes up 100%. Simple math. You put up 100K, you're up 100%. You've got 200K at the end of the first year, right? You're probably feeling pretty good right about now. I mean, you're probably high-fiving that guy. I mean, you're like talking him or her up at every networking event that you have until
Hmm.
the second year rolls around. Second year rolls around, and maybe that investment doesn't do quite as well as it did the first year. Maybe it loses 60%. When you take a 60% hit in year two, it's not 60% on the original 100K. It's 60% on that 200,000, right? So simple math, 60% of 200, you're losing 120. You get that statement at the end of year two, it's showing you a balance of $80,000.
Yeah.
Now, you and I both know that that's not, position A. That's not the preferred position that we want to be in, right? We're down 20 grand. We're not feeling really hot. But through the law of averages, your investment broker could go, look, man, I assured you that you would average a 20% return. And as a matter of fact, you did. How did they get there? This is what I call fuzzy math in the investment world. So an average return is simply the addition of a series of returns divided by the number of years. So you take year one where you made 100%. You take year two where you lost 60%. You add those two together, you're still sitting at a plus 40% for that 2-year stretch. Now you divide by 2 and you get 20. So your average return was 20%. Even though your real return was a negative 20 grand or a negative 20%. It used to kill me why being in the industry, they go, well, past performance is no indication of future performance. Now we know why.
So why is it just that transparency? I mean, I feel like that's been a constant in the financial services industry, but it maybe got worse. So is that more so the consumer's kind of fault, if you want to throw it that way, or the agent perpetuating that, or a combination of the two?
I mean, buyer beware. I'm a big believer that people need to be financially intelligent, but it's also like the way the industry is hyped up and marketed, like mutual funds. I mean, you go back to Morningstar ratings. I mean, what's the number one benchmark that they're using to figure out if something's a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star? Usually the average return is a major component of that, right? And so you're looking through historical stuff and you're seeing, this fund is average, back in the days when markets were just like crazy, it's averaged 12% over the past 10 years. What is that 12% really telling you? If you had 100,000 invested over that time period, does that mean that you are compounding your growth at a 12% real rate of return? Or do we have some of that fuzzy math? And if we've got some of that fuzzy math and the average consumer isn't aware, but the industry knows that the average consumer is going to make a decision based on what those average returns say, well, we follow the money, right? We know who's getting paid. So I definitely place it on the industry's side of the fence for sure.
Okay. And maybe to kind of bring your journey into this, I mean, did you learn a lot of that from your journey of basically losing and gaining $1 million a couple different times? Is that part of how you learned the mishaps of the industry?
Absolutely, dude. I mean, the rate of return problem was a huge one. The math problem was another really big one because, hey, it don't take a rocket science to know that, if you had $50 today and somebody snatched that away from you, well, you're down to zero. You're at break even, right? You're not quote unquote no worse off, right? You're back at break even. But in the markets, you lose 50% in 1 year. You would think if you made 50% the next year, you're back at break even. Not so, Danielson, right? And so when you run the math on that, you start out with 100 grand, you lose 50%, you're down to $50,000. Next year, you make 50%. You're like, we made it. Oh, you look at your statement, it's 50% on the 50 grand. So you just added an additional 25. And so that math problem is one that people don't really pay a lot of attention to. But again, it can dramatically impact what you end up doing for a 10, 15, 20. I mean, we went through what they call it, the lost decade from like 2009 all the way to, or 1999 all the way to like 2009. People who had 100,000 invested in the market saw those huge swings with the tech bubble and the 2008 crash. And like 10, 11, 12 years later, they still didn't have the 100,000 that they had 12 years ago. I mean, dude, how can you make it into retirement if you're still worth the same thing you were like a dozen years before?
That makes sense, and that's going to be unfortunate for a lot of people kind of going through COVID because
Yeah.
the White House is kind of using the economy as the political standpoint of like, hey, the economy is doing great, but
Yeah.
that's been wiped out unfortunately right now. So with that being said, I want to check in with the audience real quick. We had a few comments come in. We had that's amazing from Ariana again. And Randy Cooper, he said, sorry, he's late. He had to hang up on the call. It's okay,
Mhm.
Randy. We're good to go. But right now, I think a lot of businesses are kind of changing. So part of that journey you went through, we had to pick out relationships and partners and vendors to use and all that. So what's some insight you can give on people? Because I mean, I know you and I've talked about this with partnerships going sideways.
Yeah.
What are some tips you can give people when they're picking a partner, kind of looking at that, hey, I'm at that point where I need a partner. What are some vetting tips you can give people for that?
Dude, alignment is so key, man. You know, whomever you're partnering up with, you guys got to be equally yoked. Like you got to understand their value system. Like what's the engine that drives their decision making process. And if there is an alignment between those core values and how they come to a decision point, dude, like run the other way. Like just don't take 200 for passing go. Just like skip it and move on. the the other big thing that's been a real place of growth and maturity for me is I'm a financial guy. Like my bachelor's degree was in accounting. I got a master's in personal financial planning. I've had investment and insurance licenses, right? I've had no shortage of education over the course of my life, and it's been a strength for me in terms of decision making and just mapping and planning out the future. But you know how they say like your strengths can sometimes become your weaknesses?
Yeah.
Definitely went through that because I was the guy who would always want to make sure all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. And as long as I get that sense of peace or comfort with that, right? I've done my due diligence. I kind of know how the things are supposed to sort of happen. Boom, I execute. And lately, over the past years, with all the stuff that I've been through, I've had to kind of like subjugate my what I call natural intelligence to what I call spiritual intelligence. And so I studied some of the greats, and Jeff Bezos is very, very matter of fact on the idea that whenever he has made a decision on what he would call like a gut instinct, just like an inner knowing, for me being a Christian, that's just, understanding that small voice saying, dude, I don't care how many T's you done crossed, how many I's you done dotted. This is not my will for you. Go the other way. Don't pass go. Don't take on 200. Don't ask why. You'll figure it out later. And when I've cultivated the ability to kind of be in tune with that voice and be willing to step out on faith and be obedient to what that instruction is versus everything else that says to move forward, it's never failed me. And it's certainly a skill set that people have to cultivate. So I would say placing more emphasis on, I call it spiritual intelligence. You may call it a gut feel. You may call it whatever. But in business, it's a much, much, much needed skill, especially when you're dealing with people. And people are so unpredictable, man. It's just a lot of risk
Yeah.
for people sometimes. So.
This is so true, and I wish it wasn't that way, but that's the way it is. And Miss Pamela had a quick comment. She said, "Great guess, Pamela. Thanks for giving Ike the kudos."
Appreciate the love, Pamela.
I knew he'd do a great job on here. And the thing that's with this, the market's kind of resetting. If you want to call it a correction, is more volatile than a correction, but
Sure.
everything kind of started over again. So for the average consumer, what's some tips you can give them for planning their financial future, whether they're 20 or 50?
Yeah. So, in planning your future, I find that it's a lot of people delegate their financial future to whomever they're working with. And there's a part of that makes sense. But I believe that it's incumbent upon each individual to really kind of take the bull by the horn and be very, very deliberate and be very, very intentional about really up leveling their financial intelligence. I find that there's this huge, huge divide between those that are financially savvy versus those that are not. And in the African American community, it's terrible, dude. It's like really, really bad. So just some basic things I always recommend is like learn some of the basic wealth building formulas. Like learn what it looks like to be more like the bank and less like a customer of the bank, right? So things like leverage. You know, if you've looked at real estate, you understand what being able to control an asset with very little bit of money down. It doesn't always have to be money, right? It could be effort. It could be a whole bunch of different ways where you create leverage and it creates a huge, huge financial impact. Another one is opportunity cost. That's a key component of making decisions. You never just look at the actual cost. Like if you're going to go spend that money on that, you know, new Yeezy or that new car, whatever it is, right? Whatever you're paying for that, the true cost to you is not just what you just paid for that asset that's probably going to deteriorate in value just as soon as you leave the store. But it's like if you had not spent the money on that thing, but instead able to divert it into like an income producing asset, what does that look like over the next year, 10 years, 20 years? That changes the decision-making process just a little bit, right? Another really big one that a lot of people have no idea about is what I call the luck factor. You absolutely have the luck factor. It's a little bit of a play on the word L-U-C-K, but it really speaks to the heart of like how people should be parking their money. Where do you have your money parked? You see, because when you look at where most people have their money parked, IRAs, 401ks, a lot of retirement assets, they're missing on three major components of wealth building. One, be liquid. You've heard it say cash is king. So it doesn't matter what the opportunity is, right? Real estate's on a firehouse sale, stock market is down. If all your money is tied up in an asset where they go, if you touch this asset, dude, you're going to pay taxes. You're going to pay 10% penalty. By the time you're done, you're going to have 40% of what was already there. Oh, because you're in the market, we'll just take another 20 or 30% because of market volatility. We don't like what the president just said. So liquidity is really key, right? Being able to have use of that asset, being able to wield and get access to those funds without you being like put through some, you know, good God, college, I mean, initiation, you sign, hey, you're a frat, you know what that's like, right? For the process, right? So having use of those funds and then having control. Who's got more control over it? A lot of the assets that we find that we have money in, Uncle Sam actually has more control over those assets than we do, right? And then K being the knowledge. What are you doing to up-level your knowledge? So if you do put yourself in a position where you've got liquidity, you got use, you got control, more control over your assets than the average Joe, what are you going to do with that now, right? How are you going to leverage that to actually exponentially increase your wealth? So three things that, you know, most consumers could spend some time on. There's a bunch more, but that's a few to get started.
Okay, perfect. And Sandra actually had a comment. Sandra Smith, she actually put a comment. My daughter has a United States savings bond that I have done nothing with because I know nothing. Please continue to educate us. Thank you. That's probably a good thing to get into, savings bond. That's probably not as popular as they used to be, but maybe help her out with that, like some live coaching right now. So you got a savings bond you just sat on. Does that fall under luck, or there's a lot of things they got to change on that?
Yeah, I mean that's you know, there's some safety components with that. The yield isn't all that great necessarily, but it's protected and it's earmarked for something, right? So you know, I'm a big believer that you gotta attach purpose to every dollar that you spend. If you don't give money an assignment, it will find a place and a thing to go do all on its own, right? So all of the decisions you make about whether it's a savings bond, whether it's a Roth IRA, whether it's any other product, make sure you understand how that product has been designed. And make sure that the design of that product is consistent with what you want it to do, not necessarily what the brokerage firm or even what the advisor may want it to do relative to what their goals and intentions may be. So that's just an overarching, you know, decision-making process that I'd recommend anybody to use in terms of determining where they put their money.
I like that saying the money's going to go somewhere, because it's so funny when people get raises, their quality of life doesn't. Well, their quality of life might change a little bit, but their financial situation doesn't change because the money just went to more cars or more clothing or more food.
Yeah.
So right now, like this unemployment situation we're going through, the government's giving $600 extra on unemployment. So some people are making more money than they used to make because of unemployment. So with that going on right now, let's talk to the hourly wage worker that could be watching this. What are some tips? Because I think a lot of people get kind of mystified by the fact that for me to be financially independent, I got to be a six-figure earner. I got to have all these investments and all that. What are some practical things for like the guy that's working at a retail store or the girl that's a nurse on a nurse assistant? What are some practical tips you can give them to kind of help them to make their journey better?
Yeah, the first thing is just really being very intentional about making your future a line item expense. So when
Mm-hmm.
we are really, really sharp about, we got the rent, we got the mortgage, we got these bills, and then we put ourselves last. So I'm a Christian. I believe in tithing. And so that's, right up the top, right? That's money that I know gets allocated for a very specific purpose. But then the very next thing is like, what is it that we're trying to save towards? And as a starting point, I tell, if you're not saving 20%, you're just behind the eight ball, because there's so many different components that impact why you should be saving a minimum of 20%. You got technology is always changing, right? And so we are one of the biggest measures of how well the economy is doing is like consumer spending. We're always consuming stuff. So technological advancements are going to put pressure on your dollars. So you want to be saving for the impact of that. You want to be saving for what I would call functional obsolescence. I mean, I love, we had a washer and dryer from like when my wife and I were dating. Dude, they don't even make these things the way they used to anymore, right? So they are made to deteriorate within a set number of years. So whether it's the washer or whether it's other things that are in your house, you got to know that that's going to put some pressure on your finances. Inflation, right? We grew up in eras, man. I used to remember when it was like, man, I got to pay $5 for a movie. $5 for what? And it was like a big deal back then, right? Now we're paying like almost $20 to go watch a movie, right? So inflation is going to put a lot of pressure on your dollars. Just savings. You got kids, you've got education, you got retirement. These are all things that are going to put pressure on your dollars. And so if you're not saving like a minimum of 20%, I mean, you're like inherently behind the eight ball. Sticking with the theme of liquidity, everybody goes, hey, have a minimum of 3 months. Nonsense. You need a minimum of a year. You need to get to a point where you're like liquid with like a year's worth of living expenses tucked away somewhere that's liquid, that's within your use and within your control. Because one, not only can opportunities come to where you can leverage those dollars and actually exponentially increase them, but at some point you may come to a juncture in your life where you realize, hey, maybe I've been in corporate the last 10, 12 years. And I now realize that I've accumulated some skill sets, some knowledge, some expertise. And, I've kind of hit this cap, the ceiling as to what it is that I can contribute here. And quite frankly, these people don't recognize my value anymore. And so I'm ready to make a move and step out there and basically, deliver even more value to people that I know could use my skill sets. You want some margin. If you've got a year set aside in living expenses, you can go through the grind of like trying to figure out, how to get that business launched and not have the fear of like, what's going to happen to the rest of the household while you're taking this huge leap of faith. So those are places that I'd start, man, is just, making yourself a priority on your budget. And that's a word that most people, you say budget these days, and you're like, boy, what'd you call me? Fighting words. Right?
Yep.
But we gotta get more familiarized with our budgets for sure.
And when you mentioned that these terms, I mean, they're terms that you hear all the time, but I think the biggest thing for you in your practice is leveling up your financial intelligence. So budget's like a 101, we can say. Yep. But what are some ways people can level up their financial acumen? That way they can better assess, the opportunity costs and things like that. What are some ways to level up their financial intelligence?
Well, I'm a big believer that, one, you can tell a lot about anybody by doing a couple of things. One, looking at their checkbook, and two, looking at their calendar. So
Mm.
how you spend your money and how you spend your time is really probably 90% of everything that I need to know about you if I had access to both of those. So if financial intelligence ends up being a part of a personal growth and development goal for the year, then you got to ask yourself, what are you doing to up level that specific goal? Like, are you dedicating time each month? Are you a part of a book club? Do you have a team of people where you go, hey, let's hold each other accountable? Like, what are you doing to actually learn and improve? Are you taking any classes? Do you spend time on YouTube? Not just oogling and googling a bunch of nonsense, but like actually, I mean, dude, I mean, our education system is just, that's an entire discussion all by itself. But it
Yes.
amazes me how the average Joe can actually hop on YouTube and get access to just incredible, massive
Oh
amounts
yeah.
of knowledge, right? To just significantly make changes in their life. So if finances is a big area where you got an opportunity for growth, how are you spending your time to increase that? So those are all just basic things. And of course, you can actually spend money, take classes,
Mm.
go, whether it's at a local university, whether it's at classes, whether it's at seminars that people are given. Um, we just want to take inventory of your time and say, if this is truly a goal of yours, what are you doing to be true to the end results that you want to see with that?
Awesome. And I love the fact that, as a CPA and a financial planner, you kind of get both sides of the coin because with these things you mentioned for planning for the future and all that, a big element I think people don't look at is the tax implications.
Hmm.
Financial planners, they'll talk about it to say this is tax free, but it's kind of not explained clearly.
Yeah.
So for the people that are kind of looking at retirement and they're planning ahead for the future, I want to ask the audience real quick too, throw a curious reaction if you think taxes will go down in the future. Um, I want to be optimistic as possible, but if you think taxes will go down through a curious reaction, you think they'll go up through the hand clap reaction, because I think that's something people don't think about when it comes to planning for retirement. So, in your practice, is that a big thing that people should pay attention to, the tax rate, as they're kind of thinking about retirement and what they put their money into?
Man, it makes all the difference in the world, right? Because you got to think about it. If you think about the trajectory of most people's earnings years, you're going to start out at a low level of income, and gradually you're going to start increasing in income, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where most people, there's three major buckets. There's your taxable bucket, which means whatever you do currently, you get taxed on it. You get to keep the net. There's your tax deferred, which is, hey, Uncle Sam says we're gonna do you a solid, brother, and give you a tax deduction right now, and you'll get to let this money grow tax free for a period of time, and then in the future we'll tax it. And then there's the last bucket, which is your tax free, which simply says you pay taxes right now and you let that bad boy grow. And then sometime in the future, whenever you access the funds, it's tax free. So here's the simple analogy that I love to give people as to what makes the most sense. So let's assume you're a farmer. And you guys know farmers, they go out there, they put seed into the soil. And when they do, it's one seed that goes into the soil. But that one seed, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever that time period is down the road, can grow into multiple bushels of whatever was sown into the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the government says, dude, you've got two opportunities. You can either take a deduction on that seed that you're putting into the ground now, right? And come tax time, when that one seed grows into multiple bushels, we'll just come back and tax you then. Or you can pay taxes now. You have a little less going in because you're paying taxes now. But as that grows over the course of time, you get to keep all of that growth tax free. All things being equal, which would you rather be?
Yeah, the tax free definitely.
Yeah, I know what I'd rather do, right? And so there's ways to really take advantage of a lot of what I'd call the major players, right? The banks, the brokerage firms, the way in which the playbooks that they use to really kind of exponentially grow wealth and even provide for a lot of their key executives.
Yep.
Uh, by getting access to bank owned products, right? They go by the names of Boli and Coley and things like that, right? And so there's ways to align yourself with the way in which the banks and the major players are aligning themselves, not only for their pockets, but also for their top and key executives that, again, could have you essentially kind of divorce Uncle Sam and set up that tax-free future for you. So,
Yeah, I love the geeking out with you on that because I mean, obviously, you know, you and I know insurance, and that's something people don't realize the revenue potential, the investment potential, of the insurance world.
yeah.
Because, like you said, most of us you look at expenses and first is the opportunity cost in the future. So I hope people take that advice because I mean, every bank uses these insurance products to kind of build this tax-free income that's
Yeah.
untouchable, but people don't know about that. So when you learned about that and you kind of went to your family and friends and all that, what was the typical response you got saying, "Hey, you can get tax-free retirement out of your life insurance product"? And you know, what was the typical response you met with from family and friends about that?
I didn't actually spend any time with family and friends, but here's what my experience was. So being a CPA and kind of understanding the tax world and what all was going on. So I think it was 2005 maybe. I got exposed to what I've written about extensively on Huffington Post, called life insurance retirement plans, or LIRPs. So I got exposed to that as an asset. And once they sort of unpacked the tax components, once I understood that I could build this enormous, gigantic storehouse of cash that was liquid, that I could get access to whenever I wanted to without having to prove that I was worthy of getting access to it, that I had control of that asset, that I could put into play in my financial world what I call velocity of money, which is where you get multiple uses of the exact same dollar. See, because whenever we invest in that mutual fund at the IRA or the 401k, it's whatever that one asset does, whatever the final return is, that's all we got.
Yep.
But through banking laws, we know that the banks, they leverage the dollars that we have on deposit. They leverage that thing 10 times over. And
Yep.
while we're getting paid less than 1%, oftentimes a tenth of 1%, they're loaning our dollars out 10 times to one
Yep.
at rates of 16% for credit cards, sometimes even higher if you got jacked up credit. And they're creating these arbitrage profits, right? It's the difference between what they're earning on borrowed funds using other people's money. If you've been in real estate, you know that's a tried and true uh, practice of generating wealth. They're
Yep.
earning the difference between what they're making on those borrowed funds versus what it's costing them, and they're getting multiple uses. So when you start understanding all of those dynamics, you understand the fact that you can access those funds tax free. You don't have to wait till you're 59 and a half. It could be, an asset that you use to start, to grow, and to even like salvage businesses, much like Disney and J.C. Penney and a host of other companies have done over the course of time.
Yep.
And when you hear about these, you've clearly seen these examples where like an executive gets fired, loses their job, top CEO somewhere, and they're like, retirement exit package, whatever it is you want to call it, is like 10x whatever they used to make while they were working. All of that is being funded through properly structured insurance products. So once I got wind of all that, dude, and I told brother, I was like, listen, because he was doing the seminar like a restaurant that was 5 minutes from our house at the time. I was like, hold one here, buddy. My checkbook is at the house. I'm gonna run on back like a brother that's back enslaved, and I'll be right back here in like 5. I kid you not. I went back home, got my checkbook. We took an application, put a policy on myself, and dude, lights out after that. Never looked back.
Yeah, I wish that was the Disney story was the one that struck me with that. There's several books about this. So tax free retirement, y'all, is something Ike talks about extensively. It's been a thing for a long time. It's just not shared with the masses unless you're wealthy. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're perpetuating that message for people. So for people that want to learn more from you after the broadcast, where are a couple ways and places they can learn more about you and your practice?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, if you like some of the stuff that we've talked about here, I unpack a whole bunch more in my book. So definitely grab a copy of my book. I know we're going to drop that in the links here. It's on Amazon. Pick up a copy. It'll be the best $25 you've ever spent on yourself. So that's one way. Really pumped and excited about this virtual summit that I am participating in over this weekend. It's May the 22nd through May the 24th. Not only myself, but about 23 other just like what I would call financial and tax bosses are going to be dropping knowledge on how to help you make more, how to save more, and how to invest like a boss. So it's free. There's absolutely no cost. 8 hours a day. You got people dropping knowledge. So definitely check the link out for that and get you some, as they'd say, right? And then lastly, I have an ebook on one of my websites that speaks to some of the stuff that we do in helping businesses radically grow. So more than welcome to get you a copy of that and stay connected to me that way.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad to see people sharing down to earth information, because you mentioned Susie Orman, and there's these behemoths in the industry that you can never really access without paying a large fee. And I'm glad you're making yourself accessible, sharing information, making books people can purchase and read in their own leisure, and then come to you at that point. So thank you for doing that.
Definitely, brother.
Super important for all people, not just the Black and brown community, but all communities for that matter.
Financial intelligence has no racial preferences. Trust me, it's an equal employer, equal opportunist from that perspective. So
we saw that from COVID-19 when it went the wrong way. Instead of going green, it went red. We saw that hurt everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you. So, where else could, besides LinkedIn, any other places you want to tell them to find you, as far as your websites or other social media?
Yeah, so the website is www.moremorezgrowth-nofee.com. So that's www.moremorezgrowth-nofee.com. So check me out there. If you're not already connected to me on LinkedIn, what you waiting on? I'm dropping like just crazy, insane content all of the time. So definitely send me a connection request and let's build a community together. That's what it's about.
Perfect. Well, Ike, I was looking forward to this, and you delivered like I thought you would. So everybody, still be safe wherever you are with COVID-19. Make precautionary measures if you need to, and level up your financial acumen. If the market's down, this is the time to learn where everything's on sale. If you're looking at that or real estate, whatever you're looking at, level up your game so you can actually take advantage.
Definitely.
All right. We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for joining Business with Benefit.